the war was over. After 4 years of battle across 3 continents, fighting in the First World War ended on November 11, 1918, all but assuring Allied victory over Germany and the other Central Powers.
There's a happy time coming when the boys come home. There's a glorious day coming when the boys come home. We will end the dreadful story of the battle dark and gory in a sunburst of glory when the boys come home. The day will seem brighter when the
In France, representatives from the warring nations held a peace conference to negotiate terms of the war's end. Upon his return from the conference, President Woodrow Wilson presented the agreement, called the Treaty of Versailles, to the United States Senate for ratification.
Gentlemen of the Senate, the Treaty of Peace with Germany was signed at Versailles on the 28th of June. I avail myself of the earliest opportunity to lay the treaty before you for ratification. The United States entered the war upon a different footing from every other nation except our associates on this side of the sea. We entered it only because we saw the supremacy and even the validity of right everywhere put in jeopardy, and free government likely to be everywhere imperiled by the intolerable aggression of a power which respected neither right nor obligation and whose very system of government flouted the rights of the citizens.
The United States' contribution to the war effort had granted President Woodrow Wilson significant influence in Paris, allowing him to carefully craft his program for continued peace. A key provision of the Treaty of Versailles was the creation of a League of Nations, an alliance of powers to ensure that the First World War would truly be the war to end all wars.
Convenient, indeed indispensable, as statesmen found the newly planned League of Nations to be for the execution of the present plans of peace and reparation, they saw it in a new aspect before their work was finished. They saw it as the main object of the peace, as the only thing that could complete it or make it worthwhile. They saw it as the hope of the world, and that hope they did not dare to disappoint. Shall we or any other free people hesitate to accept this great duty? Dare we reject it and break the heart of the world?
Wilson's call on the Senate to ratify the Treaty of Versailles and accept entry into the League of Nations was not universally well received. Some senators, like William Borah of Idaho and Hiram Johnson of California, opposed the League of Nations in any form. Others, led by Henry Cabot Lodge of Massachusetts, were willing to negotiate with the League's advocates, but held reservations about the treaty. Their primary concern was the League's ability to send American troops to war without congressional approval. Unwilling to alter the treaty in any way, the President decided to appeal directly to the people, undertaking a national tour in September to make his case. He was trailed across the nation by Senators Hiram Johnson and William Borah, who fancied themselves a truth squad to set the record straight on the League. The irreconcilable senators often drew larger crowds than the President. Senator Johnson attacked the Wilson administration head-on, challenging the President's commitments to U.S. interests.
The President has made and asked the Senate to approve a League covenant that is to be higher than our Constitution. Except the sovereign people, no power on earth can legally change our Constitution or make another to override it. None but the people should be permitted to throw this independent republic into an international confederation where it must necessarily lose its independence of action. The great fundamental question which every American father and mother should answer is, shall American boys police the world? Shall American blood uphold old world governments and the territorial integrity of the nations which have immensely increased their boundaries? The President definitely announced himself against amendments to the League of Nations or reservations of any sort. He says, in effect, to the American people, you must accept the foreign document which I present to you without investigating, analysis, amendment, or reservation. When did the President of the United States possess the power to say to its people and its Congress, you must? Just one country is denied the privilege by Mr. Wilson of protecting its life, its treasure, its sovereignty, its blood, and its future, and that country is the United States.
Wilson was faced with perhaps his greatest setback when he collapsed in Pueblo, Colorado on October 2, 1919. Though it would not be made public until the next year, the ailing president had suffered a stroke, partially paralyzing him and requiring him to cede the floor for the duration of the debate. Henry Cabot Lodge wasted little time in the president's absence. On October 24th, he proposed 14 reservations to the treaty. It remained to be seen whether Democrats would follow their party leader or accept Lodge's argument that the League of Nations handed over congressional power to declare war to an international and possibly undemocratic body. The final showdown came on the last day of the Senate session, November 19, 1919. A heated 11-hour debate ensued. With a pending vote on the treaty and Lodge's reservations, the great opposer, Senator William Borah of Idaho, took the floor.
Sir, we are told that this treaty means peace. Even so, I would not pay the price. Would you purchase peace at the cost of any part of our independence? Peace upon any other basis than national independence, peace purchased at the cost of any part of our national integrity, is fit only for slaves. And even when purchased at such a price, it is a delusion, for it cannot last. I cannot get my consent to exchange the doctrine of George Washington for the doctrine of Frederick the Great, translated into mendacious phrases of peace. Americanism shall not, cannot die. We may go back to sackcloth and ashes, but we will return to the faith of the fathers. America will live her own life. The independence of this republic will have its defenders. Thousands have suffered and died for it, and their sons and daughters are not of the breed who will be betrayed into the hands of foreigners. The noble face of the father of this country, so familiar to every boy and girl, looking out from the walls of the Capitol in stern reproach, will call those who come here for public service to a reckoning. The people of our beloved country will finally speak, and we will return to the policy which we now abandon. America, disenthralled and free, in spite of all these things, will continue her mission in the cause of peace, of freedom, and of civilization.
Borah's moving speech turned the tide. Even Senator Lodge was brought to tears by the Idaho senator's words. Other speakers followed, but none could suppress the rousing call from the chamber's gallery to vote, vote, vote. Meanwhile, Wilson had sent a letter to his caucus that morning insisting that no reservations be attached to the treaty. True friends of the treaty, Wilson warned, will vote against the Lodge resolution. If the Lodge resolution was defeated, Wilson explained, the door will probably then be open for a genuine resolution. When the treaty was finally brought to a vote at 5:30 p.m. with Lodge's reservations, nearly all members of Wilson's party voted with the 12 irreconcilable senators to defeat it, 55 to 39. Various senators attempted to use parliamentary procedures to revise and revote on the treaty, but all attempts failed. In the midst of the protests, Senator Oscar Underwood, Democrat from Alabama, took the floor. Enraged at what he perceived as a small minority hijacking the democratic process, he lashed out at Lodge and the reservationists.
After months of debate, months of delay, the majority party has presented to the Senate a resolution of partial ratification of the Treaty of Peace, a resolution proposing certain reservations that, as the President of the United States himself has said, is a nullification of this treaty and not a ratification. With what result? The resolution comes before the Senate of the United States for final action and is defeated by a vote of 55 to 39. Although the resolution requires a 2/3 vote under the Constitution of the United States for its ratification, it commands but little over 1/3 of the membership of this body in favor of its adoption. I am not fearful that it will be misunderstood by the American people. They know who stand for the ratification of this treaty of peace, and they know who wish to destroy it. When the final vote on the resolution of the senator from Massachusetts comes and is defeated, then we have merely been indulging in child's play and must take up the real resolution that may ultimately result in the ratification of the treaty. Do that if you will, but do not think for one moment when you attempt to send this treaty back to the President or adjourn without action on it that the country is going to misunderstand who are in favor of the ratification of the treaty and who are opposed to it. Do not think for one moment that you can fool the toiling masses of America who are crying and pleading for peace. If you want peace, then there is but one way to get peace, and that is to keep this treaty before the Senate until we can secure, in one way or another, fairly and justly, a vote for its ratification. You cannot accomplish that by choking off consideration of the treaty and continuing to force before this body a resolution that has been repudiated by a majority.
In spite of Senator Underwood's protests, the Lodge resolution was voted on again, with virtually the same result. After being defeated a second time, Lodge and the Republicans allowed for a vote on the Treaty of Versailles without any reservations, as President Wilson wanted. This effort also failed. As the Senate session came to a close, Senator Claude Swanson of Virginia approached Lodge. "For God's sake," he pleaded, "can't something be done to save the treaty?" "The door is closed," Lodge replied coldly. "You have done it yourselves." It was the first time in American history that a peace treaty was defeated. The Senate's bipartisan rejection of the Treaty of Versailles proved to be a milestone in American diplomatic history. Rather than give up its constitutional power to declare war, the Senate chose to resist the pressure of an uncompromising president and reject a treaty that many believed violated some of America's most basic founding principles, not to mention its sovereignty. The defeat of the treaty was not the end of the debate on America's role in the world, but a beginning. Does America, as Senator Borah asked, rule by force? Can a nation or a group of nations dictate to any sovereign state what it can and cannot do? Does a powerful nation have a duty to protect those less powerful than itself? What are the roles of the Senate and the President in foreign relations? The League of Nations debate does not teach us the answers. It merely asks us the questions. The answers? Those are left to us.